watered down version of all these revelations.
Well, no, it's absolutely contrary to everything that you and me talk about, and it's just a bit trivia.
Diversions, yeah.
And you know.
But listen to this, George. This has just happened in the last half an hour. RT have asked me for permission to publish the video shots I took outside the BBC. Now, what RT want to do, they want to get in before BBC and expose all this. They've even contacted Gordon.
I wouldn't get too excited about RT, John. You must realise that it's run...
I know exactly what you're going to say.
Well, it's run by the people that make the Poirot programmes.
Yes. Okay, but listen, who cares if it's run by the Martians? If Gordon can go on RT, that's got 1 million, it's a worldwide audience.
Yeah, but it's just a bimbo vent. There's no reality in any of the stories. These are the guys that released the what was the fraud about the singing, and you know, all of the things about the release of Snowden into Russia and Gerard Depardieu into Russia.
Yes.
It's all just a shallow diversionary theme, and they do the money laundering. You know, their companies are associated with the laundering.
Yeah. But the thing is, what amazes me, George, is the very people. I mean, I had Press TV contact me for an interview. The very people that are run by these agencies are exposing them and want us to go on and tell them what we know. So you've got, what have you got? I mean, some people call them the white hats and the black hats. You've got the good guys on the inside that want to get the truth out, same as the BBC. The guy that interviewed Gordon took him to one side, because you know all those documents have to go up to the board of directors of the BBC. And Gordon told me something in private which was very interesting that I can't recall. But whatever happens with the BBC, there are insiders there, the good guys, who are going to make sure this information gets out.
I don't believe a minute of that yet. I mean, basically what you've got in the papers today is
believe it, but you know, if you
what they're going to impose on you and me is now an obligatory payment. If you own a telly, you're not going to get away with saying that you don't watch the BBC anymore.
I don't own a TV, George. I don't own anything. They can't touch me.
If you look at the news on the internet, they're going to charge a licence fee for that.
For what? For not having a TV?
Well, for looking at the news that's released by the BBC agencies, you're going to have to pay for it now.
Yeah, well, I've never paid for it.
Well, that's policy on the front pages of the papers today is not that the BBC are innocent and they're harbouring innocents in their thrall. It's that they are going to get more and more criminal, and they're going to make you pay for all of the fraudulent news that they release. On the front.
You're not going to make me pay, George, because I've never paid. I've never paid. I owned my first TV at 22 years old when I bought my house.
Yeah.
And I never owned a TV licence in my life. And when I dumped my TV, 7-8 years ago, they came around and they said, "You're not registered for a licence." I said, "I don't have one. I don't have a TV." I said, "Would you like to come in and check?" He said, no, I just want to cross you off the list. And I haven't been back since. There you go.
So shall we start? Have you got company check open?
Yeah, I've only got one computer here at the moment, so I'm switching between. But I've got Rothschilds Limited, which is the first one on the top.
So click on directors with that listing of 250 directors. And go to page 2.
1 sec.
I'm going to do that on my screen because I've just got my little camera on its perch now, and I've put the dodgy computer down on the floor outside the door so that the hum doesn't get to us.
Yeah, okay. I've clicked on directors.
And so that gets you a list of about 250 people with the name Rothschild.
It doesn't, George. It doesn't at all. The first name on the top is Mr. Jonathan Westcott.
Okay, so let's go back to just enter the word Rothschild into company check again. and start from the beginning so that we're in synchrony.
Yeah.
And that gives you Rothschilds Limited, New Swithins Lane, at the top of the list of 151. Can you see that?
Yeah, but hang on, it's a bit slow, which it's never slow, this computer. Let's go back when I first started. Okay, what I've got now, I've got Rothschilds Limited 014550551.
Okay, but the statistics at the top are what I want you to read out again. Companies 151.
Zero. There's zero cash, zero net worth.
No, the statistics at the top of the page. Scan up to the top.
I'm at the top, George.
No, it says companies 151, directors 290.
Well, George, we're both doing the same search, mate. We've both got different pages.
You're not looking at the top of the page.
Yes, I am looking at the top of the page, George.
So what did you search for?
Rothschilds, and the first page that came up was 014555051.
Have you opened that page?
It's open, it's in front of me.
Yeah, so go back to the original list of the Rothschilds hits, or enter again the word Rothschild.
Okay, I'm back there, George.
Okay, you see now companies, we've done this already, we've made a video about it. Companies 151, directors 290, sole traders 26, European companies 262. If you're not seeing that, you've already clicked on something and moved on.
George, I've got exactly verbatim what you've just said. Now the company at the top is New Court Street, Swithins Lane. Okay,
so that's where we started off. We had a look at that company the last time. We find Mervyn King under a false ID on the board of that company, which is just a Ponzi shelf. You remember that's Mervyn King, the boss at the Bank of England for 10 years, followed on from Eddie George and removed all regulation from the Bank of England. Now go to the Directors tab, which is the second one, and click on the 290 hyperlink.
Directors chat there, okay.
Can you see that? That's the second column. Click on 290, which is hyperlinked blue, and you'll get another list.
Just a minute, George. Just please slow down a bit, because I've clicked on that, and what's come up is what I had before, 014555051. So what am I doing that you're not doing?
I don't know, but I mean basically you can use the back arrow to go back to where you went to, or I can use again. Are you entering the word Rothschild without an S on the end?
Ah, without the S?
Yeah.
Okay, let me try again.
But if you could see those statistics.
Hang on a sec, let it load. Right, I'm now back, and well, I'm back where I started, and it's the same number.
But at the top of the page, if you scan to the top, how many companies?
Directors 290.
Okay, is the director with the 290 in brackets, is the 290 a hyperlink?
Yes.
Click on it.
Okay. And now I've got NM Rothschild and Sons.
Okay, and above that it says showing 1 to 10 of 290 results.
Yes.
Scan down until you get to the 10th result on that list.
Okay.
Then it says next page.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
The last name on the 10 is the Honourable Hannah, which is a joke about Hanukkah, the Jewish festival, Mary, which is a joke about Christianity, and Rothschild. Okay, that comes into the story later on. Click now on next page. Can you see it at the bottom of the listing?
Just a minute.
Just below Hannah, Honourable Hannah.
Yes, I've got it. Yeah, okay.
So next page.
And then you've got Rothschilds Limited at the top.
Scan down until you get to the Tsar in Russia.
The Tsar in Russia.
Yeah, it's a fucking massive set of crimes.
Of course it is.
Tsar, Rothschild, Nikolaevich, Romanov.
Yeah,
A director.
Hang on a sec. It must be a long way down.
It's ninth of the 10. Between Charmaine Rothschild and the Rothschild Trust, Switzerland AG.
Okay, are we talking about 6 BD Prince de Gaulle's niece?
No.
Because that's the 9th one
You
down.
clicked on next page, did you?
Yes.
So you're on the second page of the 290 directors.
Yes, and the...
Go down to the 19th director.
Hang on a sec, George, let me make sure I'm on the same page. The listing I've got at the top is active 014550551.
Sounds as if you've clicked on something. All we're looking at is the list of 290 directors. You must have clicked on something.
Okay, now then, if I
So
do
click
that,
the back arrow until you get...
Okay, I've come to Mr. Thomas Osborne Rothschild.
Now we're in the right place. Now use your scan thing and read out the names as you go down.
Anthony James de Rothschild.
Yeah, how many postcodes? 4. Next name?
Nicholas David de Rothschild.
Yeah, keep going. Then we get a little bit exotic.
Vladimir Levi de Rothschild.
Yeah, and you realise that the levies are the people that are the administrators for Israel and Zion all through the Old Testament. And that is Levy and McRae, the corrupted law company in Scotland.
Of course, yes.
Keep going down.
This is fun, isn't it?
Vladimir, to my knowledge, is not mentioned in the Old Testament. It's snowing now. Keep going down. Keep reading out the names.
You've got Anthony James de Rothschild.
Yeah, a little bit of French.
You've got Mr. Zvi Rothschild, ZVI, that's a weird name.
Yeah.
You've got Rothschilds Trust New Zealand.
Yeah, we'll have a look at that later on, because my students in New Zealand laugh at me when I tell them that all of the New Zealand banks are owned by the Rothschilds.
George, all my old friends laugh at me. They think I'm a conspiracy nut. It's...
This is the British Business Directory we're reading from and quoting from. Yeah, keep going.
So then you've got the Tsar, Rothschild, Nikolaevich Romanov.
Yeah, he's the man who stole Hearts Football Club.
That's the one.
Yeah, and he's the one that has the private submarine. He has a merchant bank, and his friends now run the bank in Lithuania that was in charge of the regulation of the crashing of Hearts Football Club.
No wonder my friends think I'm crazy, because... yeah, sorry.
Okay, and just as a matter of interest, read out the next one.
Rothschild Trust Schweiz AG.
Which means Switzerland.
Ah, yes.
You remember Switzerland?
Yeah.
Strictly neutral for reputational reasons.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, what shall we open first? Because I've got a long period of activity in New Zealand, I'd like to open the Rothschild Trust New Zealand first.
Okay, but listen, before we do this, have you got a bulletproof vest?
Yeah, I've just been out for a jog and I saw a tea towel, but I did not see any pistols. They do not have the courage to confront me.
People keep saying to me, you know what you're doing, you want to be careful. So I'd say, well, okay, what do you want me to do? Just forget it and go back to fishing?
The world's in such a mess now that it is irresponsible of anybody not to do what we're doing.
I can't stop, George.
They have got us screwed into an impoverished corner, and the next step is always global warfare. But because of you and I doing what we're doing, they do not dare do that now, because they'll be lined up and shot by their own troops.
Well, some of them are already being lined up and shot, George, but that's another story.
Right then, which of those are you interested in first? Because
we've got well, listen, there's hundreds of them. That looks interesting. That's Tsar Nikolaevich.
There's nothing very sinister other than the name Rothschild in the SARS bloodline.
Yeah.
But when you realise that, and you realise, you know, you're a fan of Andrew Carrington Hitchcock, and you've read the same stories as me about the SARS being shot dead by the Rothschilds. But what you've got is the surviving members in their boardrooms.
Exactly.
And they're absolutely ruthless with what they're doing with other countries' assets. And this is the country that Putin is demonised in. But these are the people that are stealing from England, Scotland, Ireland and Wales. Yeah.
We're going to stop it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just have a look at the interlocks with Romanov. Click on directors. Don't open the Tsar Rothschild Nikolaevich Romanov site.
Just click on directors.
Click on directors, and that gives you his interlocks. I don't think there are very many. I was expecting to see a huge number, but because they're already embroiled in fraud and pan-continental theft projects, you know, they do not want to register them as open friends of the world owners. But click on it and let's see what we find.
Well, you've got Tsar Rothschilds Nikolaevich Romanov again.
So this is Interest-Free Bank Limited is the first company that they list. Can you see that? And you've got Arabic names.
Yes.
And then you've got the Tsar Rothschild Banking Group Limited, Alia Rothschild Romanov, Mrs. Mahira Rothschild Romanov. So it's not just the one person. This is the Tsar's dynasty, all at the trough. Yep. And I cannot yet see any money laundering vents that are recognised. Keep going down. Fashion and Textiles Commercial Bank Limited. Yeah, it's only 3 directors and a secretary, and that's it. So I looked at this earlier, there's nothing very sinister other than that they are linked into the Rothschild groupings, but they are not.
Nothing sinister about
They're not openly trading with them. So go back to where we were at the bottom of that list. That's the bottom of the first 20 directors. And it actually takes you to the list, the top of the list. And if you click, you're back on the front page of the director listing now.
No, I'm not, George.
Oh no, you're back on the whole list that we've got with Rothschild Limited at the top. So click.
No, at the top of the page, it's Tsar Rothschilds Nikolaevich Romanov. That's at the top.
Okay, search for Rothschilds again.
Okay.
Click on directors again, and go to the second page again. Or no. Click.
Okay.
Get the.
I've already done it, George. Right, the top of the page is Rothschilds Limited.
Yeah. Okay. Click on directors again.
Yep.
And go to Hannah Rothschild, who's the 10th of the 290 directors.
Okay, hang on.
And you'll get all the cover-ups and all the names that they slip in to cover the crimes.
It's Rothschild.
So can you see it? At the 10th,
no, I can't.
10th of 290 is the Honourable Hannah Mary Rothschild.
Yes, I've got it. Yeah.
Okay, so click on the wee word directors.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that gets you her massive interlocks. Now the names here will be familiar, and you know how Scotland is all riled up about England stealing the stone of Scone.
Yes.
Scone is one of the directors on these lists.
Oh yeah.
You know how everybody is upset that they had a socialist prime minister elected in France, and the night that man was elected, his plane got hit by lightning.
Yeah. Coincidence.
He is only a cover for the directors on the Rothschilds listings. So there's a Hollande on the Rothschild listings, spelt differently. We'll work our way through the listings of directors that interlock to the Honourable Hannah Mary Rothschild, and it is incredible how many of them are covers for what the newspapers write about?
Of course.
Yeah, so click on directors for Hannah.
Okay. The top page is Candlestein Films Limited.
Yeah, that's right. So that's another false news vent.
Yeah.
Okay, and you've got one of those rotary things on the top of your mouse. So, and this one is riddled with the fraudulent laundering companies, some of whom are your neighbours. What do you see next?
Oh, SJP Secretaries.
No, next. Your neighbours.
Brighton directors.
Yeah, and the next one? Brighton Secretary. How many companies crashed? Out of how many run? 41,875 of 42,473 crashed by Brighton Secretaries Limited.
Well, I'm yet to pay them a visit, George, but that's
and
on cards.
All of the business that they have done for Miss Hanukkah, Mary the Christian Rothschild, is done on one day in February 1998. Can you see that? Brighton directors, Brighton secretaries, 1 day's worth of laundering.
Hang on, well, which have you clicked on?
No, I'm still just looking at Clandestine Films Limited. And when you saw SJP secretaries, Brighton director is below that, Brighton secretaries below that, and on the right hand side you see how many of the companies they've been involved in they've crashed. Can you see that now?
Yeah.
And they were appointed on the 6th of the 2nd 1998 and resigned on, oh sorry, they've done nearly 2 weeks work. Yeah,
bad.
It's just amazing. So that's the thin blue line, and there you've got the name Sheila Avril Gallagher.
Yes.
That is the wife of the golfer from Scotland in the Aberdeen region.
Okay.
Yeah, they are all involved in massive cabals. All of the sporting leaders, like the Glasgow Celtic manager, are involved in these fraudulent cabals. The Glasgow Celtic manager is involved in companies in Exeter with my wife.
Wow.
He's in a very compromised position, and none of my wife's directorial details, apart from her name and her middle initial, tally with any of my wife's birth dates or any of the facts about her. All of it is a massive series of fraudulent covers, but every one of these companies issues share capital to itself, including the companies in Exeter. Have you heard of Ian Botham?
Yes, the cricketer.
The cricketing thief.
Yes.
And the video that I made the other night with the very poor sound quality was on a criminal called Philippe Edmonds. He's on the Cricket Council for England. He plays cricket for Rhodesia and England, and he steals from 56 registered companies, and he owns the house called Stocks that was owned by Victor Lowndes and the Bunny Girls, which is a joke about Hitler's allegiance.
Yep.
And the bunnies are the people who are Hitler's commanders-in-chief.
We're now talking about the Gonculator. Do you remember that thing?
And on the front page of the Scottish newspapers today, we have the cover-ups for all of those revelations.
Yep.
Everything I talk about is covered up with trivial news, and it is really sad that the people that own that house now own part of the River Tweed. They sacked me for my innocence. His name, can you guess what his name is with the huge raft of cover-ups that they use?
It's just a guy called Bowden.
Harris. Rolf Harris. Jake the Peg Boy.
Yes.
Yeah, and he runs Butlins, the organisation that has the donkeys and do the neighing, about the religious fraud.
Yep.
Yeah, you realise that the donkey in the religious fraud is Jesus Christ, and that on Palm Sunday, and in the David Copperfield film, the donkeys passing by are not allowed to pass by. And that film that was made about You've Got to Pick a Pocket or Two, you know, the anti-Semitic one, featuring Fagin, Fagan is also a director on the Rothschilds listings, although not this one. It's just amazing. So let's keep going down. So the next one is Wadsden, is where one of their massive mansions are. I used to live right next door to it. Almost all of the Aylesbury Rugby Club directors and many of the players are enslaved in their financial empire. And my coach at Aylesbury Rugby Club went to Liverpool as his next point of call, port of call, the slaving centre and the hub for the New World Order laundering tools, where Hitler was hosted for some years. Yeah, that's written about by people like Beryl, I forget what her name was, but all of it is covered up by the type of false names that I'm going to introduce you to as we scan down the list. So have you scanned down to Rothschild Wadsden Limited?
Hang on a sec, now I have to look for it.
That's the second one below. You've just been looking at the Brighton Secretaries. It's just a few inches below them on the listing. You haven't clicked on another.
Okay, yeah.
So David Sylvester,
yeah,
Alison Bromovsky, nothing sinister about those. And then you get Nathaniel Charles Jacob.
No, I don't. The next one is Sarah Sweetland.
So you're still looking at Hannah Mary Rothschild, directors and secretaries.
Yes.
And you've seen that the first company is Clandestine Films Limited.
Oh, now you're going back again.
Yeah, well, so you've gone down further than me so far. The next company is Rothschild Wadsden.
Yes, I've got that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's nothing sinister in that.
No.
Although there is a Morgan and a Townsend and a Troughton, which is a Doctor Who. Townsend.
George, we've got different. You're saying, oh, we've got this, we've got that, but they're not there, George. I've got different listings than you have. Because you're saying stuff, and I'm looking, but it's not there, George.
Are you sure?
We're on the same page.
Because the next bit is very important. You're into the investigative journalists and all of the massive revelations through those companies that are the laundering vents for the elites. Russia Today, Al Jazeera. What you've got here will scandalise you, I hope.
Well, that's okay. I'm good at being scandalised.
Well, the next name that I've found, but you cannot see, next to Miss Avril Gallagher, the golfer fraud, is Mr. Stuart Gerish. That's not Brian, the false plant in the Facebook sector that has two. Yeah, can you see it? And he's got 59 companies, 54 of which have been crashed since 2001. Yes. That's just one example. And
12th of the 12th, 2001.
So you can see that now.
Yep.
Can you see above him the name Peter John Charles Troughton?
No, above him.
Yeah, so Stuart Gerish is a previous secretary. A previous director is Mr. Peter John Charles Troughton. He's a Doctor Who.
Yes, but the thing is, George, you're saying above him. Above him I've got Miss Avril Gallagher.
Yeah.
Above Stuart Gerish.
Well, it's above that block. My screen must be much larger than yours. So it's the next block of names.
It is. I'm on a laptop, so you're seeing more than me.
So so just above Sarah Sweetland is Troughton. Above him is a Morgan. Above him is a Townsend.
Yes.
And the Morgans and the Townsends are all rugby players.
Yeah.
And when you get to relatively anonymous rugby players further down, I can tell you who exactly they are. Almost everybody is covered by a false ID. And when you look at the Lothian road frauds, almost every name in my hometown is used now. It's not world leaders, it's the fall guys in the local communities that just step forward. And a lot of them are profiteering in the church. Some of them are Flemings profiteering in the warmongering, and some of them are horribly sick. Yeah, and
they're all sick if you ask me.
Well, I meet them on the streets, and now they're looking for sympathy and empathy from me, and I'm delighted that they're prepared to talk, because they understand what has backed them into that healthcare corner.
Exactly.
Okay, the next one is the Jazz Baroness Limited.
Hang on, let's get back to this. Okay, yeah, got
And
it. Yeah.
just above that, you'll see Stuart Gerrish. So as you're beginning to see how it works, if you get a freedom fighter or a new name in the English rugby squad, it will be a cover for somebody at the HSBC or in the interlocks with either the Fleming family or with the Rothschilds, or with those people that we've talked about with the false IDs called Linton Blair. Yeah, I'm really delighted that you're back making videos with me, because with your insight into the history and the current events since I was in New Zealand, it makes us a much more potent team.
Well, it's I've got a lot of people are waking up, George. In the last 48 hours, I had over 100 friend requests on Facebook, and every one of those is sharing all this information. So this is this is good stuff.
So keep going down. You've got the Jazz Baroness, and when I see something that they think is really funny, so the Rothschild Foundation, active since 25th of the 5th 2011.
Yep.
Who's the first director?
Lord David John Ogilvy.
That's the Ogilvies.
Yep.
Now wait for it.
Angus Ogilvy.
That's the Ogilvies that are the interlocks between the pharmaceutical frauds and the monarchy in Braemar. Okay? Gordon and I talked about that when you were listening in, and Gordon knows that the Ogilvies are financial criminals in Scotland linked into Prince Charlie's trusts and the royals, and I know about their massive links to the leaders of universities and the leaders of pharmaceutical companies, which used to be run out of Scotland until I revealed that, and suddenly they're laundered all over Europe. And the man that was my boss is listed on the Forbes risk list. That is I forget the name of the director at the Wellcome Trust, but he's now on the Forbes and the Debrett's rich lists.
Of course.
Okay, but
yep.
The stunning news when I released all of that is that the Catholic Church now have, what can you guess what they have now? Based on the Ogilvy.
What they have in terms of what, George?
What are the Catholic Church doing to cover the crimes of the Ogilvy dynasty, Lord David John Ogilvy? What do you think they've done in recent weeks?
Paedophilia?
No, they've launched a saint called Ogilvy.
Oh, okay.
Yep, so we have a Saint Ogilvy now.
But there was another thing about this Saint Denis or Saint Denis.
Yeah, that's the French frauds where the saint carried his head 10 kilometres until he got to the end of the Roman road. Yeah, and the other saint that you must know about, because you're aware of the banking frauds and world history, the first saint ever to be appointed in Australia is a banking fraudster. Can you guess?
Australia.
Yeah. Just 2 years ago, after we'd had Stephen Hester the Jester resign in panic because I revealed his treason.
Yeah.
And I revealed his role in the killing of Richard Chang, which I do not believe was realistic now, but he was good enough with George Osborne's brother to flee the country. Not Osborne, who's the head of the Labour Party that Gordon got pictured with?
Oh, Miliband.
Yeah, so Miliband's brother and Hester fled from the country the same week that on the front page of my website I posted their pictures with beside the guillotine. Yeah. And what the name of the saint from the RBS is Saint MacKillop.
Ah, yeah.
That's Australia's only saint so far. Yeah, it's absolutely grandiose in their capacity to fool the people and concurrently make a joke from it.
Exactly. It's a big laugh to them, George.
So keep going down, and you've got a whole list of Rothschilds, because this woman is very powerful.
Yes. Well, you know, when you say they're powerful, I don't think they've got any power at all. These are people, we know where they live, we know what schools they send their breed to.
These are the people only people with the capacity to make strategic decisions in our whole world. They are really, really powerful, and they've been like that since they moved out of Kievan and moved into the central banks all over our globe. You cannot get more powerful than that. Take my word for it.
Oh no, I see what you mean in some respects, but these people have been exposed, George, and they lose their power.
Well, they're now beginning to quake in fear, because they've had the power to execute the innocent people and the taxpayers in uniforms. But since we started, I've been talking at lunchtime today to a number of religious denominations in the supermarkets, and they now understand the massive fraud that this is, and they acknowledge that religion is part of it. But each one of them so far is still saying that our religion has nothing to do with it. That's the only frailty. You know, they cannot see what they are doing to themselves and their own children.
Exactly.
So how far down have you got now? So you can see Lord David John Ogilvy. And since we started to release that, the only thing in the news is about the saint. He's dissolved and collapsed all 6 of those companies that he ran through the Rothschild Foundation. Can you see that? He's bailed out of everything. He was appointed in 2013, and everything that we are now revealing has cost him all of his jobs. That's the same story for the Hammonds, the same story for who's the boy, the Tory person that resigned with his sister on the Princess Trust, William Hague. All of them are bailing out in panic because they have not got the courage to stand up and justify what they have done to British citizens and global citizens.
They think their power's gone. Their power has been their secrecy.
Well, they're still powerful enough to have, and the Jehovah's Witnesses understand this entirely. These are still the strategic presence behind the United Nations and NATO. So they've not lost their power base, but what they are being exposed to is the treasonous accusations that they are committing genocide using our country's armies.
Exactly.
And at the same time, they're stripping out the pensions and the salaries for the people that participate in both the army and the police force, and they're greedy enough to make profits from the selling off of both the militias and the policing, and selling it to people who can barely speak English from Eastern Europe, where they originated from. Let's keep going down, because we're going to run out of time. And some of the cover-ups are massive, and some of them are really, really funny when you see through it. You know, they have got a fine. Have you heard of the artist called Rayburn? Go down to Windmill Hill Asset Management Limited.
Yeah, got it.
You remember that the Windmill Hill, when I investigated that in an earlier investigation, it crashed my computer, and we lost access that weekend to the company check site. Can you remember that incident?
Yeah, I do, very clearly.
Tell me who the 4th director for Windmill Hill Asset Management is.
1, 2, 3, 4. Mr. Dennis Graham Rayburn.
Okay, that explains all of the fuss in the city of Edinburgh about the authenticity of the Rayburn paintings.
Okay.
Yeah, everything is twist. Have you heard the name below him before?
Let's have a look. Mr. James Goodlad.
Yeah, they're part of the administration at Miss Manningham Buller's Imperial College. I got accredited by the good lads in my first teaching job in Britain's universities.
Oh, good.
And that is part of the Viking frauds, and Magnus Sally Magnusson, her dad was Magnus Magnusson, and she's part of the religious songs of praise frauds. Her mum has dementia and they don't understand why. And her dad preceded John Humphreys as the question master on Mastermind. That's Baron John Humphreys.
Yes.
They are all at the trough. Let's keep going down.
Okay, you've got Rayburn, good lad. Then you've got Mr. Ron Yedida Tabush.
Yeah, I don't know about him. I did not click on that. You could have a little look and see where he's registered, because it looks like a kind of art. Can you click on him?
Yeah, I'm just waiting. It takes a while to load. It doesn't normally. Okay, he's got one active company and he's resigned from 2.
But where is he registered?
He's in Windmill Hill Silk Road.
Oh, so he's in Hertfordshire. He's close to home.
Yeah. Buckinghamshire.
And you realise that Silk Road is the Silkworms project that we talked about the other day?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so they're producing the silk stockings that they use in the haberdashery sector as they plan and execute the wars, and the Nazis and the invading troops are allowed to prance around in the silk stockings with Mrs. Simpson in wartime Paris.
That's it. Yeah.
Keep going down.
Well, are we on the same page?
Yeah.
Because I'm on Windmill Hill Asset Management.
Yeah, so keep going down. Each time. So go down to the previous directors and secretaries, because I can't see much very sinister about the current ones. And then tell me why you remember the name Maurice Edward Hatch. Where have you heard the name Hatch before?
Just a minute, George, because I'm just swapping pages. Because you're...
It's previous directors at the Windmill Company.
Yeah.
Francis Bray, a joke about the donkeys.
Yep.
Kay, Bailey, Armstrong, Muradek, Stanton, Goodwin, Maurice Edward Hatch. Where have you heard the name Hatch before?
I've heard of a Tony Hatch.
Yeah, so have I can't remember why.
It was in something to do with music or records.
It's one of our mutually favourite films. Can you guess? I'm not got tears in my eyes this time because I've got.
Yeah, it's the one with.
Mary Hatch is George Bailey's wife.
That's it.
Yeah. Can you?
The film was A Beautiful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a wonderful.
And don't get me started again. I do not want to break up. Yeah.
No.
But can you see that everything that we talk about, they cover the director details by releasing that news? Now that film was made decades ago.
Yep.
And Maurice Hatch was only registered in 97, but this will be a financial criminal family.
Of course.
Like the Welshies. The Welshies are at the HSBC. And when I reveal that there are Welshies in my hometown, they come out and talk to me. Look at
is this the soft drink people, Welshies?
No, the Welshies are massive financial magnates. They're into South Africa, and they are the people that some of them that I told you about when I gave you the statistics on their holdings at HSBC.
Yep.
It covered the whole of the page, and you nearly freaked out when I mentioned the sums. It was trillions. Yeah, and so can you see how they link the name in the directorial registrations that nobody's ever read before because they don't understand how to use company check.
Yep.
And when you look at the Lothian road fraud, it's massive. But so, and there's Doctor Who again, and just below Simon David Brown, you get the cover for the French president that was hit by lightning because he's a cover for the Rothschilds overlap in the directorial boardroom. Can you see that? Miss Beatrice, Hannah, Millicent, what?
I don't know.
So it's just. Did you see the Hatch name? This is still on the previous directors for the windmill company, and the name is Beatrice Hannah Millicent Hollande, Hollond, an overt cover for the election of the Socialist Prime Minister in France. That's the meaning of politics nowadays. That is the meaning of sport. When you told me about the defeat of the Germans, or the Brazilians by the Germans, and it was a 7-1 score or something.
Yeah, that came out of Switzerland FIFA, because my mate Dr. Sean Ross, he exposed that scam. They tried to put him in prison for it.
And I think I've explained to you in the past, one of the most potent fraud and ethical examiners in the whole of America is a guy called Jeff Rents. Have you listened to any of his videos?
Yes.
So when I tried to get in touch with Jeff Rents, because I got a message from the gods that he was the right stuff to help, the four corners joke that Peter and Gordon keep talking about is a cover for the four corners in the Christian Bible. That's in the Revelations chapter.
Okay.
And that was written by John. You're a good guy in the Bible. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's nice to know.
Yeah, well, and so the four corners thing is in Revelations in the Christian Bible, but in the Bowden and Peter Eyre version, it's about criminality and about all the interlocks with the fraudsters. And when I say to them, are all these people that are revealing the fraud actually innocent? They say, no, they're fraudsters as well, but they're a different tier. Yeah, it's just amazing. And the names, the use of the names of the celebrities is the really telling thing for me. When you see somebody pulled into the English squad, be it soccer or be it rugby, you can tell that something's gone on in the back room, that person needs to be launched. And when Theresa May was accused of all those extradition crimes, there were a couple of Mays launched in the next fortnight into the England rugby team. And it's the same with the whistleblowers in the police. The Farrells are the people that revealed the crimes of an aircraft crash. You've heard of Farrell, the whistleblower in the policing sector?
Of course.
Two Farrells in the English rugby squad.
Yep. And what about the other reprobate whose name they're using now?
Who's that?
John Paterson.
In the squad?
No, this was you told me about this the other day.
In the Scotland squad we've had Patersons for a long time. And they're from Gala, where my friends from Eastern Europe told me that in Michael Moore's constituency town it was pissing down with snow earlier in the day. And it's just the linkages of the weather to what the human behaviours are, that's exemplified by President Hollande in France. And you've seen all the shenanigans. So what I was going to tell you was that when Jeff Renzi was revealed to me as one of the most potent innocents on our globe, along with a guy called Dean Henderson, I made a video on Dean Henderson's life and his contribution to the history of global banking. He's a contact of mine, I've talked to him several times, and he's the man behind the launch of the Brad Pitt film about fishing on the west coast of America. It's called A River Runs Through It.
Yes.
And the river runs through a region, and there's a great falls that they went over in a canoe in the film, and that is where the American air base still is, that was used to bomb Berlin and Russia in World War II. Nobody knows about it but me. And that is right on the river that they used to make that.
I know about it now, George. So they've got an extra target.
Yeah, well, it's not. It's as soon as I realised, when I talked to the guy called Dean Henderson, and Henderson is a villainous name. It's linked to the Peels and the Peelers and all of the corrupted Metropolitan Police issues.
Well, years ago, we used to have a guy called Dickie Henderson. Do you remember him?
Yeah, he was a comedian on the telly.
Yeah.
And the head of the local policing when I met my wife was a man called Henderson. and the Henderson that ran the rugby club and converted it into a professional style outlet with a drinking bar and stuff, they tried to get me married off to one of their cousins, and that is the daughter of the police superintendent in Hawick. And when my wife visited the borders for the first time out of the Rothschilds empire in Hertfordshire, she was stopped and searched and inquired into by the Hawick police. Yeah, all of them knew that I'm coming at them eventually.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they do it. I don't know whether or not the soothsayer thing that, you know, the thing that they do in the Lord of the Rings film where they put the little puddle of water, and or they've got a crystal ball and they gaze into it.
Okay.
It's almost as if the whole of my life has been foretold, and they need to plant people into my life to persecute me and to try and gag me, which is why I'm making a political show trial out of my divorce proceedings, and I'm winning now. They are tumbling in fear of the disclosures.
George, you can't lose, mate. You've got truth on your side.
Well, that's right. And when they realise that, when I listened to that video that Greg Hallett made about, you know, Hitler was cast into poverty, and he lived in the sleazy dens, and he was sent to Britain.
Yep.
And that is the downside of the, you know. But when Hitler began to make his sermons and his preaching from the churches in New Brunswick, and Beaverbrook came out of New Brunswick, everything is a script that has been written. And you know, I get the impression that the gods and the devil, if there is a devil, are kind of playing out a board game here.
You better believe it, George. And I can tell you something now, because you're talking about the weather. Well, about a week before March the 1st, because that was a big day, you know, outside the BBC, it said the weather was going to be bad, cloudy and rainy. And I said to myself then, there's no way. I said, when Gordon makes that speech on the steps of Trafalgar Square at the BBC house, we're going to have a break in the weather. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And as soon as we finished, the sky clouded over and it absolutely pissed down. But the weather was perfect when we needed it. If that had hit us when we had all the equipment, the amplifiers, everyone, you know, and the cameras, everybody would have run for cover, and that would have been a disaster on March the 1st.
Yeah.
But in fact, it's turned out to be, well, it's beyond my wildest dreams, George, to be honest with you. Because what they'd done, they'd set up the barriers outside BBC House to stop us. And Gordon went through the barriers with one of the officials from the BBC and disappeared inside for an hour.
Yeah.
With all his documents.
Yeah, but you know, I'm not going to be courted by the BBC. They are criminals. They are massive criminals. They are massive fraudsters.
But they're now holding information that if they don't make available to the public, they're complicit. They've
been doing that for the last 5 years.
Yes, but they've
and Gordon and I sent many received the letters that you send to Radio 4, you get confirmation of receipt. Nothing has been acted upon. They crashed all of the banks. They got all the economic lectures given by the Barclay man, Bob Diamond. The next economic lecture was given by the man who asset stripped the Co-op Bank, Peter Marks, on the directorship at Marks and Spencer's, on the directorship at massive fraudulent banks which have crashed in the Anglo-Irish sector for decades. None of them are brought to justice. And the last lecture was given by Mervyn King, who's on these interlocks. That's the head of the Bank of England stealing from the country. Yeah? All of that is reported to them, and all of the receipts I have. Reporting it to the BBC will not change it. Reporting it to the innocents who are losing their jobs and their pensions in the militias will change it. And reporting to all of the sacked policemen and all of the former parking attendants who have already lost their jobs in Scotland, to people who can barely speak English, and to people who are supported by MPs that will not let their constituents into their office.
Why do you think the police were so courteous to us at Trafalgar Square and BBC? I'd already been around every police van and told them about their pensions and their jobs being handed over to G4S. That's when their ears pricked up.
Yeah.
So they know. And,
okay.
It's spreading like wildfire, George.
So do you want, shall we make a separate video on the Lothian road frauds, because it is immense?
Sure, definitely.
So
good.
Let's just keep scooting down through these listings, and when I see a name, I will explain the joke to you. Have you heard of this? Have you heard of this?
Hang on a sec, George, because now I'm on the page with Tsar Rothschild Nikolovich.
Well, it will get terribly complicated and really slow if you catch up with me on every name that I detect. So just
go ahead, George.
Mr.
Because I'm switching between windows.
I think this is still the Windmill Company. Mr. Kevin Edward. Have you heard of the Stone of Scone?
Yes.
Mr. Kevin.
It's supposed to be placed under the Queen's throne.
Yeah, and it's a breach of justice that we no longer have a stone brick. The reason for that is that on the Rothschild interlocks between 1991 and 1994, you have Kevin Edward Scone.
Yep.
Doctor Who keeps coming up. The garish name is listed also as a previous secretary on that, with the Gallagher, the golfing criminals. The miners are aristocracies in Northumberland. They're on the lists. You've got Sandra Robertson, and something that links into the Waterloo fraud and the religious fraud. You will not be. Yeah, that is a really good guess, because that is correct. That would have been a correct answer, but it is not the name I've got here. The name I've got here is the Duke of Wellington, Arthur Charles Valerian Wellesley. Yeah, so you get the Christianity Protestantism at the end with the Wellesley, yeah, and you get the Duke of Wellington, who is the victor and the confidant in the Rothschild movie, with the Rothschild, with the five-pronged, what's the flower called that he wears in his lapel?
Oh, the fleur-de-lis, is it?
No, I forget the name of the flower, but it is an icon for their family for all of its history.
It's the rose, isn't it?
No, it's not. It's the.
No.
My professor in London, who lived overlooking the Lord's cricket ground, used to grow them. They're really rare and difficult. It's not a crocus. It's a. Shit. It'll come back to me. Let me keep going down.
Okay.
It's a five-pronged flower, and it's white with yellow at the core, and I just wish I could remember it, because they're everywhere. They're in the they're in the Jehovah's Witnesses Hall. They're in the windows of most of the elites that you pass.
We're not talking about lilies, are we?
No, it's. Shit. Orchids. Orchids, that's what it's also a link to the orc goblin joke, and the orc goblin joke is part of the church roof joke, and the Lord of the Rings orcs are the deviant people that cannot do anything unless they are given orders to lop people's heads off, and that now is the people that attend the Colosseum and the mindless sporting fans. Yeah, they are just an army of morons.
Yep.
Okay.
This won't go down well with football fans, but it's a fact.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been in the videos I've made. The Arsenal people chant that song about the war dead that I told you about. The all around my hat we will wear the green willow, and Arsenal football fans are run by a Frenchman, and all of it is just. The whole of the diversion of the people into eternally overlapping sports tournaments and events. When I discovered that.
It's beyond belief, George. When in my younger days I was cherry-picked to play for Southwark, And
at what sport?
Sorry?
Which sport?
Soccer.
All right,
soccer.
yeah.
I was picked. There was me and one other guy. I used to play right back, and one other guy was picked from the school. He was centre forward, and I was naturally good at blocking, and I never let anyone pass into the goal area. Now, I had no interest in it, and years later, I've met people that their lives, they can tell you every football player, every match they won, every World Cup they won, and their heads are full of soccer, of football, and they know it like the back of their hand. I have no interest in it. You've got a bunch of guys on a field kicking a ball around, and you've got grown men hero worshipping them.
Well, have I told you about the Manchester United scandals?
Well, hang on, you've got Sir David Beckham, who shares the royal box at Wimbledon with the royal family, for Christ's sakes.
Yeah, well, he interlocks with Princess Anne on the commissioning boards.
Exactly. He's
and Nick Clegg is on that.
Yeah.
And Martin Sorrell is on it. And and what he does is Beckham and his missus, they get on the Ali G programs, and I've told you about the links of Ali G to the Baron Cohens that are the high priests of Israel since the second chapter in the Old Testament. And all of that links into the religious frauds, the kosher butchery, and the sequestration of property all over the world. And all of it is tied into those old kosher laws and the kashrut laws that are laughed at in the Devil's Advocate movie. And Manchester United, when I reveal that all of the frauds that launched the Busby Babes, because Busby Barclay is a killer of his girlfriends and the bunny girls that he gets pissed with in the Nazi sector in America. That's why Matt Busby was appointed to Manchester United, and that is the whole basis for the Katie Price, Busby Babes, all the cover-ups, and the history of that house at Stocks where Victor Lowndes ran the Bunny Girls sector. It's right along the road from where Christine Keeler was launched to cover up the Cold War.
That's it.
And all of that is right next door to Petty France and the activities of Mervyn King. He lives in Petty France. And in Petty France, it's called Petit France, because that's Little France, and it's the no bombing zone in World War II. And all of the French treason people were there, and all of the patriots were buried in shallow graves under the building. And it's all in that horrible book by Henrik Kruger that reveals that all of the Formula One IDs are
this was the book they tried to ban, isn't it?
It was banned in 1980, and it's never been made available since. But the people in America that published that are prepared to publish what I'm talking about now. And that is what will break the camel's back. And even the camel's back, as you know, is a massive joke. The camel coat, the Camilla thing, all the tiger jokes, the whole of the Piso menagerie is a joke against the world's people and their capacity to create civilization. And the Pisos knew that it would be bust open. That's why
they didn't know it was going to take over 2,000 years, George, did they?
Well, I don't know whether or not it is 2,000 years. When you see that the Garden of Eden was renamed the Yemen in 1960, you and I have no way of knowing how old world history actually is.
True.
Can you see the magnitude of what they do? Shakespeare writes to cover up the Jack the Ripper murders. And that's slipped in without any of the generations noticing that it's inconsistent from what their dad learned at school.
Yes, exactly.
But if you just keep pressing home the fact that all of these names are covers, and the thing that I've told the world about Charles Bean, that I believe is the thing that has made the most difference so far. That is what made Princess Anne quake at the knees.
Good.
She's a hardened criminal, but when they saw that evidence was there, that her mum was shedding crocodile tears at the cenotaph the same day as I made that interview with Jim Fetzer. And Jim Fetzer would not, I believe that he might have had a gun to his head that afternoon.
It's the first time, you know, he's got a weekly programme now called False Flag Weekly News, and it's good.
Right.
But that interview that we were on, what was it, the Fetzer?
Yeah, The Real Deal.
The Real Deal.
But the interview I'm talking about was...
He got very shaky towards the end, didn't he?
Well, that's not the interview that I made with him after that. Yeah, so that is,
okay.
What you're talking about is the interview that the man Cahill tore to pieces. The man Cahill is just a cheap shot cover for the Cahills, who are the killers in the SAS.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, his video now has only got 250 hits. And when you tie that Cahill into the Irish sectarian violence for a decade and a half, and you tie him into the NATO army leaders that were also killing in Ireland, that's Mike Jackson. Yeah, I've done that now. Those stories are told, and that is the thing that led to the persecution of Michael Jackson the footballer. And Michael Jackson the footballer now came back out of Jacksonville in America, and he bought Fulham Football Club from Al Fayed, and the statue of Mike Jackson, the persecuted pop singer, is outside the club. They think they are really funny, but when you reveal that chain of command that led to the brutalisation of Ireland for 15 to 20 years, and when you explain that all of the genocidal leaders were trained by the Spanish and funded by the Australasian drug-running narcotics cycle that links you into the royal family, then they begin to quake. And that's when Princess Anne declared that she would eat horsemeat burgers, and that she was prepared to do anything she could to keep the numbers of the human race down, like her dad. Yeah, he's the one that, if he had his life again, he would come back as a virus and take out millions and millions of global citizens. That's what they live for. Hello?
I know all this, George. It's shocking. I just want people to wake up. You know, I mean, I spend sometimes 17, 18 hours a day trying to get this message out. But,
yeah.
You know, what do you do?
So let me just tell you first, our audience must be quite switched off, because none of the revelations I'm making here are very sensational, apart from that of the Tsar. And
well, to us they may not seem, but if someone was listening for the first time, George, I think they'd be quite freaked out. So what shocked me was that one of the interlocks for the Rothschilds that I was searching took me into a company called Lothian 50. Yeah.
And you know all about Lothian Road.
Road, yes.
And what Gordon has told us is about relatively minor frauds involving war crimes inquest chairs and Malcolm Rifkind. So those are major people. The fraud leads to the launch of a company called Cairn, and the company called Cairn plants its director on the court of the Bank of England to steal from a virtual fraud empire from the funding for democracy. Okay, so that is a grievous set of incidents. But when you look at the interlocks between the Rothschilds and the Lothian 50 companies, and you realise that there are 3,000 Ponzi shells, and that each one of the companies, like with the Fleming disclosures I made the other day, each year they launch 50 new Ponzis, so that every year they've got a whole set of laundering shells. And that is the people that run the businesses on the future of Syria, on border control issues, and Palestine. Yeah, they're medical charities for Palestine, and when you look at the listings, they're just the fraudulent laundering directors and secretaries, and some of them are the Brighton secretaries and the Brighton directors that we've referred to, right on your doorstep. They are one of the biggest criminals of the lot.
Yeah.
And I cannot remember which of the Rothschild directorates I was looking at the other day, but it takes you into a firm of solicitors in Scotland called Burness,
Okay.
Let's try hitting Burness now.
Is that double S? Burn
Yeah.
with E double S.
Yeah. Okay. So that gets you hits in Glasgow, in Aberdeen, and in Edinburgh. So it's a Scottish law company, and the Bothwell. Bothwell was one of the lovers of Mary Queen of Scots. Yeah.
Okay.
Bothwell Street, Glasgow. Scan down a wee bit.
Yeah.
50 Lothian Road.
Yeah.
Festival Square. Okay.
Yeah.
This is a legal company with no liabilities. Can you see that? Burness Paul LLP. 50 Lothian Road.
Yeah.
And the reason I found them is because they interlock to the Rothschilds, and the interlocks are a series of Ponzis called Lothian. And have I told you the story about Andrew Lothian?
Go on.
He's a member of a thing called the Speculative Society in Edinburgh, and that takes us back into the fraudulent law company that was created by the Crown Office to lose Scotland the referendum. In other words, it was a treasonous act to corrupt the process of the referendum that led to the resignation of Salmond, Kenny McCaskill, and all of those other innocents.
You warned them several weeks ago.
Yeah, absolutely, and all of that is tied into the Trident nuclear weapons scandal out of Eccleston Square in London.
Bernie Eccleston, yeah.
Well, no, Eccleston Square is the reason that Bernie Eccleston is launched into the world, because the Trident scandal is registered in that part of London. So he's a cover for the more illicit involvement of the mercenary army leader Tim Spicer in that sector. So nuclear weapons, it's not run by the governments. You know, this is the nuclear deterrent that could lead to human extinction. It's in the hands of criminals and directors that are the Pearsons, friends of mine in the academic sector.
You've got good friends, George.
No, I have no friends. All of them are total traitors to me.
I know.
Yeah, and all of them run their little frauds, but this little fraud could lead to human extinction.
Yes, well, it could, and they'd love it. They've got their deep underground bases, but what they don't understand, George, is that even if they did go in their silly little holes, crawl in there like cockroaches, they're never going to come out. And they know it.
Yeah.
They know it. They'll get buried in there.
So, I'm not sure how I got this on that computer that makes all the noise, but this is the company that, if you look at the registered directors, they are commonplace names in my region.
Excuse me.
A lot of them, you've got all the names about the Mackays and the law enforcements, the Humes, the Moffats, and none of them are world leaders, but all of them are involved in all of my friends on Facebook and all of the links to the local politicians in this region. And I'm talking a lot about the crimes of Norman Lamont and his family. His family live in my town. I was in their home the other day, and I did not realise that the Lamont that was a professor at Otago in New Zealand is also a member of the same family. And you know, they're getting, because I'm making explicit revelations about the ownership of Otago University. It's not owned by New Zealand, it's all owned by Bristolians and Liverpudlians that have become professors here, and they go and steal on behalf of Her Majesty in other people's innocent little nations. That is the whole of the Commonwealth is dealt that dirty deal. Yeah.
How much money do these people want?
Well, it's just
disgusting.
It's just about personal wealth for their generation, and their children have been sent back into Britain, where an innocent Briton has to pay £9,000 for each year of his education. So the dean at Otago University, whose husband is a Burns Club fan, and she's a citizen of Musselburgh, where the MSP is, or where the MP is he's the man who sat in debate with Alexander. I forget his name. He's the one with the black bushy eyebrows.
Oh,
not Rifkind, but it's.
Oh, it'll come to me in a second.
So
I know
that person's parents live in Musselburgh, and
he used to be a Chancellor of the Exchequer.
absolutely, they're right at the top of the political tree,
Yes.
and it's absolutely fraudulent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know that woman who sort of, you know, she made friends with me in Dunedin. Her husband is the Burns Club reader. You know, he sits and talks about timorous beasties and little mice and things. You know, all the mice and men stories, all of that, and all of the Shakespearean writings, and all of the stuff that you've got in the mythology about King Arthur. It's written by the super elite authors, and it's the King Arthur story, have I told you this before, is written by the popes in Rome.
Fantastic.
Well, it's not. It's an absolute fraud that they can manipulate the monarchies, you know, but the monarchies hit back on them, and eventually when you get the rift between Henry VIII and the Christendom, the whole world is in disarray. And at one point in a thing called the Great Schism, they had 3 popes across Europe. One in southern France, one in Bohemia, where they were immune from the plague. That must have been the most decent of the 3, and the other one in Rome. And you know all about the Roman fraud already.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
Yeah.
So I just wish I could get the link, but because of that noisy old computer that is now shut down again, because it has been bugged by the Intel people in Australia, the Intel and the technology in Southeast Asia and in China and in New Zealand and Australia, I think, is a lot more advanced than it is in Britain. And that's why Coulson has joined Cameron, and that's why, you know, the American input is through the Murdoch dynasty. But yeah, the whole thing, like the Celtic football team that won the European Cup, when I was a fanatical supporter of them, it's got the Craigs are on these directors with the Rothschilds. Simpson played in goal. Murdoch played 4. You've got a Lennox who's in the Braveheart film.
Yes.
You know, the guys in the back room that get the leprosy. You've got a Johnson who's the man who signed Executive Order, you know, the thing on Air Force One that sold the American Central back into the Rothschilds thrall. The whole of the sporting celebrity world is launched because of the humorous and, you know, deceitful cover-ups of their names and their launch into that dynasty. And Annie Lennox, the pop singer, is the Scottish government's advisor on the restoration of Malawi. And Malawi is where my son went, you know, on behalf of the Queen's Equerry, Lord Strang Steele, and that is what launched the Ebola epidemic. Yeah, everything that I talk about, they have to cover up with a cheap shop fraud, and everything that I talk about in healthcare, that's been covered up by the launch of a new saint.
They always make the same mistakes, George. They never change, do they?
Well, I know that I've got the people in a really compromised position now. They're going to close my local parish church in the Catholic denomination, and a worshipper there is the former head of the Tory party. His name is Michael Ancram. Yeah, he's the Marquis of, can you guess in terms of the frauds we've been discussing? The Marquis of Lothian.
Yeah.
And the Lothian, the fat bloke that was released into the public eye in the Scottish Law Reporter reporting, that's the Scottish law courts that are closing now. 2 of the 4 in my local region, since I started making a fuss about my divorce proceedings and my absolute innocence, 2 of the 4 have closed for lack of funds.
Excellent.
Okay, it's not excellent, it's absolute fraud. They're emptying the treasury, and they're allowing.
Just saying, it's good that they're backing off.
Well, no, they're still persecuting the petty criminals that use the cannabis but the narcotics laundering who are in the palace, all of them are in league with the secret society in Edinburgh that launched Andrew Lothian's story. Now, Andrew Lothian is a very mature solicitor. He's a really fat bloke. He's like an orca fat bloke.